Ladies and gentlemen, we're live in the arena. In one corner, Dan Jam Barker doing the worm with his arms.
Woo!
And in the other corner...
Not well.
No, not well. Redgrave TV. Dan, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, doing grand. You know, what a week it is. It's America's birthday this weekend, so that's something to look forward to.
It is. You know, on a week where it's all going to be dedicated to American independence and history, we just straight up didn't even consider that as part of our topic.
Maybe you didn't, but my stories all take place here in the U.S. of A.
All right, okay. Well, there you go. So, welcome to BS in History. We're excited to have you back. This is episode 3 of BS in History. Not that there is an order. This is not a narrative podcast, or I guess it is. It's episodic.
Like episode 8.
It's episodic. It's an episodic. Episodic.
It's an episodic adventure.
Adventure that you're on with us. Oh my gosh, Dan! I hear that there's a historical story behind your coffee mug. Can you tell me about that coffee mug?
Well, this coffee mug is from the 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. I don't think there's any historical significance, and I just thought it was a cool mug. Yeah, if anyone can tell me something that happened on the 6th floor of the Dealey Plaza, I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about that.
I don't know, and I don't.
Oh, okay. That was this is like, the museum that they made the book depository into, which is where what's his face was when he shot JFK.
That is great.
Now
got it. Got it. Okay. Does it say 6th floor on the mug?
It does. Here, let me hold it up, see if anyone else can see it. Lower.
Nice. Yep, 6th Floor Museum. Look at that. Wow.
Only on Twitch, guys.
It's also a cool style of mug.
It's almost too cool given the context of where you're.
Like that deserves like a World's Greatest Boss style mug, you know, like or not number one boss.
It should be somber, somber mug.
Yeah. It should be like an Office Space style mug. Why don't more places though give that kind of mug as souvenirs? Because I have a million mugs in my cabinet that all have the logo of some place, but none of them look that cool.
I know this is my favorite mug. We'll
find the manufacturer of that mug.
Peak mug for me.
Does it say anything on the bottom? Is there a manufacturer? Can we get some BS and History mugs made up with that style?
It's hand thrown at DeneenPottery.com.
DeneenPottery.com. If you're watching, if you're listening, we're in.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. Well, I'm glad to be back here for another week of spitting history stories at one another and trying to fool each other. There's some upcoming things in the realm of podcasting and stuff that I know that I'm really excited about, but I'll let you kind of share some of that.
I'm just going to go real quick because this is not about. It's not about. No. But for anyone who wants to hear more of me, two things. Number one, make sure you follow this Twitch channel because we may or may not be starting to play some D&D. Well, we've already been playing D&D, but a group of us may or may not start streaming ourselves playing Dungeons & Dragons. It's a wild adventure through the multiverse. I can't explain more because it's a little too hard to explain. But beyond that, my podcast, Go Folk Yourself, will be returning from its hiatus July 4th on America's birthday. So Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, Go Folk Yourself, or you can go to gofolkyourself.com. And get ready because this weekend we're dropping a very topical episode.
Ooh, we're going to pop all the links to that stuff in the description of this here YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. So get ready for all that stuff. Now, Dan, we're back for noted. Tabbykins noted in chat. We're back for another year or another episode, another week of spitting fake history stories at one another. So, as a quick way of introducing this idea, Dan and I today have each assigned one another a topic. In that topic, we've gone and researched stories, interesting stories, things that we find fascinating about the history of that topic. 2 of the stories we're going to tell each other today are truth, and one of them is complete and utter BS. We made it up.
Total
fiction,
lie.
total lie. And so we are going to try to convince one another that the stories we're telling are true, and see if the other can guess the one that we made up. Now, as an aside, the story that we made up will be 100% fiction. We won't
100%.
all of it. It'll sound believable. It'll have historical context, but the details,
Sure.
the details are made up. All right, because what we don't want to do is slide in one little false fact and say, "Aha, gotcha, I lied." That's not the case. All right, if you know your history, you'll be able to pick it out. You'll know the lie. And if you don't know your history,
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we're so good at writing. That's how it is. Each of us will get the opportunity to ask one question per story to try to trip the other person up. And sometimes it's down to their answer. Sometimes it's down to how weaselly they are when they try to come up with an answer on the fly. So, with that, do you understand the rules of the game, Dan?
No, go over it one more time.
No, I'm not doing it again. I did it this week. You get next time. Another thing we take turns on is who goes first, and I believe I went first last time.
I think you did. Now I don't remember.
Me neither. I did.
Wait, hold on.
No.
No, I went first last time because I got it right in the end.
God.
So yes.
All right.
You're first. This.
All right. Well, here we go then, guys. We are going to get started with BS and history. Join us on this journey as we tell each other our historical stories, with my topic revolving around propaganda. Propaganda.
Ooh, what are you drinking there?
Oh, yeah, I'm drinking a La Fin du Monde.
Oh, I've heard of that.
La Fin du Monde. Yes, you can find it at most alcoholic places that serve tall
ABC
bottles.
Liquor.
You can find it at ABC Liquor, definitely. You can also find it in the Canada section of Epcot. At least you could last time I was there, if you live in the Orlando area. It's delicious. It's also in a sort of a fancy glass that I got from BJ's. You know, like the chain restaurant with all the beer and the menu that is like a novel.
Did you buy it from BJ's?
I did buy it from BJ's, believe it or not.
Okay.
It wasn't, I didn't win it. I actually spent money on merchandise from BJ's, but only because they were advertising it on the table and I did not have a beer glass. I did not have a beer glass that was shaped thusly, and I wanted a beer glass that was shaped thusly. And so I ordered a beer that came with the souvenir glass, paid a little extra, took it home, used it to this day. That was years ago. That's story number 1.
I get that.
Nick Snug Sex, this is the bougiest show. We are. All we do here is sniff wine and tell fake historical stories. Now, Dan, as a quick reminder, before I tell you my 3 stories about propaganda, I do have to ask that you close chat. Because chat's little sneaky bastards, okay? All right, they'll give it away.
Thank you for reminding me, though, because I'm the type of person who sits there and watches it anyway. And
I
goes
know.
like, what are you talking about, man? I want to say hi.
I've been texted that I've been randomly selected to participate in a Florida opinion study.
Oh.
Do I believe it?
Well, let's do that live.
No, we're not doing it live. Now, I think I turned on some timers that should pop up in chat, by the way. But if you're watching in chat, just so you know, today we're recording a podcast here, so you might, it's just a listening experience. Might be limited chat interaction, at least from half of this team at one time. Dan, you gave me the stories, or the topic of propaganda, and I'm ready to go.
Oh, I'm ready to listen.
Next says false. Already false. Correct. All right. So propaganda. Propaganda is interesting, Dan. What you wanted to know about were 3 stories of effective propaganda, times that propaganda worked really well. And the hard part about that topic is that if I tell you just stories of propaganda that was the most effective, likely you've heard about it. So what I either have to do or tell you stories about propaganda you know about, but did you know? Or find propaganda that you might not have known was effective, not even know that it was happening, but it happened. It happened and it changed things, and you didn't even know it was going on. And that's mostly where my stories lie. So we're just going to dig into it. I've randomized the stories. There is no narrative sort of flow to them. They're just 3 instances of propaganda. And interestingly, they all 3 take place in the 20th century. I found that you can go really far back. The first instances of propaganda were sort of Alexander the Great even sort of spreading a message to various communities and civilizations about, his dynasty and his greatness and that kind of thing. So the idea
That's why everyone called him the Great, is because he spread the rumor. He
spread that name, right, exactly. So propaganda goes a long way back, but the most prevalent examples of propaganda happened in the various wars and military operations of the mid-20th century. So the first one I have is called Is This Tomorrow? That's what I named my story. Is This Tomorrow? So this is about the fallout from the Red Scare. And the way that the fear of communism sort of bled into the mid-20th century, specifically into the Catholic Church. So the Red Scare happens in the late teens, early 1920s, I think just up until 1920. And it's essentially, a mass widespread fear about the prevalence of communism and socialism in America. And as a result of that, there are sort of these mass deportations of socialists, and then persecution of socialists throughout that time. And the Catholic Church was in this position at the time where it was already not disposed to communism, right? But there were various opinions from within the Catholic Church. Specifically, there was this sort of dissent between rising Irish population in eastern cities like New York and Boston, and then these migrating Italian immigrants who were coming over to America in the 1930s, in sort of the mid-war period, who were oftentimes, not universally, but oftentimes a lot more radical in their opinion. And so the Catholic Church had this sort of dissenting opinion on the idea of communism and socialism, but ultimately it shook out that by World War II, the Catholic Church was largely vehemently against communism, to the degree that during World War II, they even would sort of echo certain Nazi propaganda about the idea of communism, and that the rising Jewish population was causing a rise in communism. So you get this weird echoing of the Catholic Church and the Nazi Party. Not fun, but that's how it was.
Yeah. 30s and 40s were a very weird time.
They were some time. So, with the Catholic Church being more militant than ever about their anti-communist sort of agenda, enter their forms of propaganda against communism. So, this took a lot of different forms at the time. They were publicizing on radio against communism. They were even some of the first to use television for as a means of propaganda against communism. But that's not the story I'm telling you. The story I'm telling you is of the time that they soiled the most holy of mediums and took the popularity of comic books to a whole new level. Oh yeah, the Communist Party. You ever read a comic book written by, or not communist, I'm sorry, the Catholic Church. You ever read a comic written by the Catholic Church?
Not a good one. I can't imagine it was by the church directly, but rather an avid supporter of the church.
Right. Yeah. No, this is not those handouts that you sometimes get on street corners that tell you strange sort of stories about to indoctrinate.
What are those called? I can't remember what those little
they
religious
have a
comic
name.
books are called.
They have a name. I know what you're talking about. No, this is a straight up comic book, bro. This is a real deal, 10-cent off the shelf comic book. And I mean, you know this just being a fan of comics, but especially in that time frame, comics were used as a sort of political ideation, in general, Superman and just altogether superhero stories were used as war propaganda, more just a reflection of American sensitivities at the time.
Sure, it was jingoism.
Yeah, right. This is not that. This is I'm going to preach you something through this comic book. And the comic book was called, Is This Tomorrow? America Under Communism. It's just not very subtle. So on the second page of this comic book, it says there's a large bit of prose which begins with, this comic was published for one reason, and then dash, and then in all caps, to make you think. We want you to think, Dan. It also had a page.
Okay.
Page that's one of my favorites. It was called the 10 Commandments of Citizenship, and it had 10 bullet points as to why you should be anti-communist. Number 10 was be American first, which is great that that's number 10, not the first. And then number 5 was practice your own religion, which I also like to think is the Catholic saying to come up with your own religion and practice it.
Yeah, Catholics wanted you to create your own church. That is exactly what they have been about since their founding.
Yeah. So in the actual narrative of the book, schools and universities are nationalized. The free press is outlawed. At one point, a Catholic flings a Bible into the face of a would-be assassin as a way of deflecting the assassination. The Bible just hits the face. And there's this there's this all-around anti-Catholic persecution happening, along with a confiscation of American guns. And so there's this narrative that communists are... Yeah, I know. There's this idea that communists are out there, they're lying in wait, and that for every one official member of the Communist Party, there are 10 people, others ready and willing to do the bidding of the Communist Party. My favorite line...
like Hydra.
Right, 100% like Hydra. Like, they are out there, they are hiding, they've infiltrated our government. And it also portrayed the meetings of the Communist Party as if there are all these communists lying to their wives that they're at union meetings, but actually they're at Communist Party meetings. And
so it was also a subtle anti-union comic.
Yeah, and they're like, they're too late, so like the wives are like, he's like, I gotta get home because my wife will never believe I was at a union meeting this late. Yeah, and then my favorite line is someone has some diabolical plan and goes, a perfect excuse to get the Catholics. I'll get the Protestants later. That's what one of the communists said.
I mean, I guess you got to ward the Protestants too.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Hope.
So that was how the Communist Party, the Catholic Church, demonized the Catholic Party in the late 1940s, early 1950s, which eventually led to the, obviously, like the blacklist and certain other kind of things escalating throughout the 50s. The Catholic Church was a large proponent of that, and their various mediums, including this comic book, were to blame.
It's why everybody... We didn't get as many Charlie Chaplin films as we should have.
Yeah.
It's very important you know that it's the fear of communism that stopped Chaplin films.
Dan Barron, any questions?
So I guess my question, obviously, if this is 40s and 50s, this would not be directly a Marvel or DC or any of those publishers, because that was not before they existed, but before they went by those names.
Sure,
there were a lot smaller companies that got eaten up in that time. What company did publish this?
Good question. I
want to see technically which company still owns the rights to it, because at this point, one of the major comic book distributors owns the right to that comic, which means they could do it again.
That must be the case. From what I'm seeing, it was originally run as a strip that appeared for a while in like a college newspaper. So it wasn't published as a single book originally, and I don't know the answer to who published it when it came out as a single volume. I do believe you can still buy this book.
I am going to do off-air research much later, because I've got some story ideas, and I think if someone owns the property, I can pitch them.
Oh my God! Is this tomorrow? America Under Communism? What, the movie or the TV show?
No.
An HBO miniseries.
It's time we follow up with the characters from that comic book and see how they're doing now today.
Yeah.
So we can make the comic book "Is This Today?"
Right. All right, Dan. Story number 2. Story number 2 I called "I Wish I Was a Little Bit Taller." Now.
Go on.
Now, so this is a relatively short story because I don't have a ton of information about it, but I loved it so much. So by 1942, with the war already 3 years in, the well, I should say it this way. The war was already 3 years in, and it was sort of mid-escalation of the World War II effort, and there was this mass sort of American propaganda wave happening to support those staying at home in the workforce, right? To support women in the workforce, to support the ongoing fight against, the Allied parties, right? I'm getting that mixed up, right?
Wait, did you say against the Allied or with the Allied?
With the Allied.
Okay, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Axis.
I'm like, there's an A word I'm not remembering. Against the Axis parties, by those not in the actual military. But there was also this ongoing issue where the draft only applied to men who were 21 and over, right? And so America began to look towards the next years, not knowing how much longer the war effort would be continuing, began to look towards the next years of American military recruiting, and was beginning to require more voluntary recruits. So you see this as an increased effort to glamorize service and sort of vilify Nazis, right? Glamorize the voluntary enlisting into military service. Now, in order to enlist in military service at the time, you had to be 18. However, 16 and 17-year-olds could join with parental consent. So, yes. So
it's like marriage.
Right, yeah. So you get this sort of strange targeted ad campaign to effectively children who were going to be coming of age to get parental consent to join the military. You get this sort of weird sort of enlist in the military thing targeted towards children. So what you wind up with is a book called I Wish I Was Older So I Could Join the Army. It was not called I Wish I Was a Little Bit Taller. I wish it was.
I wish it was.
I do too.
God, I wish it was.
It was called the long title, I Wish I Was Older So I Could Join the Army. It was published by Houghton Mifflin, which in the 1940s was the publishing arm, which like I remember from, I think, my school textbooks. But in the 1940s was the publishing arm responsible for bringing the French character Curious George to American bookshelves in the first American Curious
George.
Right. So the book was aimed at ages 10 to 14. Essentially glorifying this idea that in a few years when you turn 16, you can, get permission and join the military. So it told the tale of a young boy, just from visualization, looked to be around 10, who said the titular line, I wish I was older so I could join the army, and then found himself in various imaginary military situations. On one page, he is playing a drum. On another, he's holding a gun as attack planes fly overhead. It's this very glorious scene. It's not bloody or anything, but
it's about to be.
The implication is that obviously war is so great. Look at me, I'm fighting for my country, and there's American attack planes kind of going over. And then finally, he is seen tearing apart a giant stone swastika. It appears to be stone. So it's sort of cracking.
Everyone should do that. I don't care what age you are. If you find a giant stone swastika,
yes,
you should absolutely break it.
And on the final page, or what appeared to be sort of the resolution of it from the images I could find, the boy's older and he's in uniform and a young woman is hugging him. So it seems to be that he's hugging his sweetheart as he finally goes off to war. What I could not find was any data on whether by 1940, 4 or 5, if we'd seen an increase in young enlisting in the military. I couldn't find any data to back up the fact that this was effective. But,
I don't think the military releases their enlistment data for public consumption, so it's fair that you didn't find that.
But I found the book and it was sick, so I had to write about it.
Did you read the book?
I mean, I read the pages that are visual, there's images. It's not a whole book. You can't go Amazon page through it or anything like that. But you find pictures if you Google it, on Google Images, the separate images that are the different frames of it. So I'm assuming the order. I don't know that the order I said it in is correct. They're all just individual.
Swastika was the first page, actually.
You have to imagine that's how it starts. And they'd be I wish I was older so I could join the army. And it's just that's it. There was a ton of blatant anti-Nazi propaganda, at the time. This is not part of my story. It's just in research, we were not shy about calling out the enemy, you know, like by name.
No, I mean, there's a Disney cartoon, like Donald wakes up as a Nazi. Like,
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like the name Hitler even is on a ton of propaganda, just straight up saying like, don't, you know, what was one? This is not a story of mine. It is something I found. It was like,
it might be my favorite propaganda poster.
I don't know.
You're thinking what I'm thinking. I'll say what mine is.
I don't remember mine enough to actually say it. Well, here, I'll try to find it. But what's your favorite propaganda poster?
It was a rideshare propaganda encouraging people to share rides.
When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler.
When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler.
It's on my screen right now because it is the one I was thinking about. That's so funny. Oh my God.
It's the best piece of propaganda America has.
When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Oh my God.
Yeah, make sure you share a picture of that later because
I will.
In that poster, it is a man driving with the ghost of Adolf Hitler on his right.
I'm actually really glad I didn't write about this. I didn't really consider much of it, but I saw it and thought it was funny, and I'm glad I didn't write it because you know it. So that's good.
I know it very well.
All right, last story. The Sacred Sword of the Patriot League.
Oh, God.
All right.
Something about this feels racist, and I don't know why.
It is not a KKK league. It is not in any way like, I know it sounds that way. It is not. So this I thought was really interesting because it is both propaganda, but also like this weird military operation that we did in Vietnam. So the Sacred Sword of the Patriot League was a black psyops mission to indoctrinate North Vietnamese into a fake resistance group. So
I'm sorry?
Yeah, okay, all right. So there was this issue in Vietnam that there was no resistance group amid the North Vietnamese, right? Like there was no bootstrapped sort of resistance effort.
Sure.
It was us and the South Vietnamese versus the North Vietnamese, and that was just kind of it. So what American soldiers, in conjunction with the CIA, got approval to do was kidnap and blindfold Vietnamese fishermen and peasants from coastal villages, and they would bring them to an island that they called Paradise Island, and it had been set up as a liberated zone, as if it were this small militant resistance group. They printed up flags that were blue and white. They called themselves the Sacred Sword of the Patriot League. They had uniforms. They had all this kind of like guerrilla resistance-y paraphernalia, if you will. And they would bring these North Vietnamese like village people here, and then they would keep them for at least a month. But they were taking people who were malnourished and who were in pain and who were like poor, and they were taking really good care of them. So they were making this resistance out to be Shangri-La, like this magical place you got taken by this resistance group. Meanwhile, over the course of the month, they're indoctrinating them with this idea that like you should also be free and you should get paid for the work that you do, right? Basically talking down communism at the same time. So
Always.
What do you say?
Always. We're always talking down
it's all about communism. So then they would get sent back to their village with like a gift package of stuff that was eventually confiscated almost always by the North Vietnamese, but it was had like fishing supplies and medicine and stuff. And then they would go spread the word of this resistance effort that is amazing and Shangri-La and oh my gosh, we should be free, right? And then there's this other interesting fact that the after sending them back, they would arm them sometimes with a radio that was tuned into this radio station, which is gray propaganda. So gray propaganda is propaganda where you don't tell the source of the fact that it's fake. You don't tell them where it's coming from. You just let them imagine it. So they get this radio station that's basically just airing anti-communist propaganda, and they just have to assume it's coming from the Sacred Sword of the Patriot League. And so then anyways, so they go spread the word. It creates this dissent in North Vietnam against this fake militant group, and it causes just enough confusion and strife that the American government maintains to this day that it was worth the money we spent on it. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't win the war, so I don't think we can call that worth it.
I think their cost-benefit analysis. All right.
I just think like hindsight's 2020. It's easy to look back and think that was a bit of a waste.
It was. That's true. You know what? I don't think I gave you the. Oh no, you did. No, you didn't. I don't think I gave you a chance to ask a question about stories 2 or 3. So I think it's time for you to ask some questions about. I wish I was older so I could join the army, and the Sacred Sword of the Patriot League.
Well, I didn't have a question for number 2. Okay. That was the problem as well, or I would have stopped you.
I guess you asked kind of about the pictures and the if I read it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll count that as my question because that one was pretty straightforward. I guess where do they say where our Shangri-La was? Like, where? I know we obviously had bases in the area, but
right
to pull something like that off that is both isolated.
Oh, it was an island. Did I say that?
Oh, you did say that. You did say that.
I mean, I don't know. I could look it up and try to find exactly where. But I mean, it was offshore enough that it wasn't going to be. This is
the part where he just goes to Google Maps, pulls up Vietnam, and says any island.
Yeah. It was called Coo Lao Cham.
Got it. Okay. Believable.
Those are my stories.
This is tough.
All right, this
is a tough one.
Here's what we're going to do really quickly. We're going to go ahead and open for the 3 viewers. I don't know if everyone got to hear it, but we've got a few people in here. We're going to go ahead and open a poll, and we're going to start it. And so you can say story 1, story 2. Oh, yeah, you use exclamation point vote, story 1, story 2, story 3. I think you put a space between vote and story. Yes, so.
We'll find out.
We will find out. If anybody is watching and wants to do it, it's exclamation point vote space story 1, story 2, or story 3. Hey, we got to vote for story 1 as the lie. We got to vote for the.
I've learned not to trust the audience, so you guys can say whatever you
want.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to tell you. Yeah.
Oh, I don't care. I'm not listening to them anymore. What do they know? They're just people.
All right, we did get a vote for. Unfortunately, I've given away, but we got to vote for the comic book.
Also, that didn't sway me. The comic book, I fully believe. I cannot express how much I believe that the Catholic Church would try to figure out.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm wrong, I'm going to hate how confident I just said that. It will bite me. But
I liked this week. I was complaining earlier that this week was difficult. I'll talk about it in a bit.
So, as kind of guessed there, I'm between story 2 and story 3. All of your stories sounded very real. I just need to say that I am actually really at a. None of this was something I knew about. So you did it.
Cool.
But story 1 feels believable. A, because I could see the Catholic Church trying to use it as a way to outreach for themselves in general, but also B, because the Catholic Church, especially under Pope Pius XII, is historically known for the aid they gave to the Nazis. So it's not far-fetched to think that they would be anti-communism, even if it was on the behalf of the Nazis and subsequently America. 2 and 3. It's hard to believe that America created a Shangri-La island, because North Vietnam wasn't a nation. It was almost. It would be like calling the Confederacy a nation.
I get that. Yeah.
So like I could see why they would not have had a foothold to build resistance, because they were a resistance army, and then the people who were there who weren't involved were just people. Like they were people who lived in that area and then just kind of had to listen to a new military. But this feels like absolutely something the CIA would rubber stamp and send forward, because like, why not give it a shot?
Sure.
Maybe it works.
Yeah.
Story 2, I want to believe, but I feel like that's where I'm leaning to the false one. It is the most obvious sounding propaganda of your story in the like direct, straightforward, and it doesn't even strike as like something weird the military would do to try to convince children to sign up when they're older. So I think I'm going to go with story 2 though, because it almost seems too easy. It seems too simple. So I'm going to go with story 2. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Your vote is in story 2. Chat's vote is in story 1. So Dan, the story that was false was story number...
I hate this.
2. I lost again. Damn it. I feel better this week, but I still lost. All right, so let me give a little bit of context here really quickly. Now, the name of the book, I Wish I Was Older So I Could Join the Army, is sort of lifted from the tone of a poster that says, I wish I was a man so I could join the Navy, which is just not awesome either, but was real propaganda. So you can look that up. That was kind of the verbiage was real in a way. And there absolutely is propaganda geared towards children. It's just not about, I couldn't find anything that was like enlist in the military. It was more about what you can do at home, or how you can support your parents kind of thing, less than it was like in a few years, get ready. I couldn't put it past, with the tone of everything that I was seeing, I couldn't put the idea past that there could be a sort of children's novel like that. I was going to change. I didn't know whether I should. Houghton Mifflin did publish Curious George in the 1940s. It was a fringe character. I don't know if that was like an arbitrary detail. I should have like changed the publishing company to a different name, but like, who cares?
No, I mean, that didn't give it away. If anything, that was what made me question my feelings.
That was my historical context that I was like, that's true. In On Time, I was able to locate that the name of the island was Kulo Cham. So Culaocham, 3 words. And so there was this issue.
Is it still a paradise?
Oh, I don't think so. I very much doubt it. No. So there was this other issue that in North Vietnam a few years prior, and I wish I had the context for it, but I'm not going to go clacking away on my keyboard right now to find it. But either way, North Vietnam had pretty much been already stripped of anyone who would be considered anti-communist in the first place. So some events had transpired in the years leading up to the war that caused those people who might have been sympathizers of the sort of South Vietnamese and American cause to get out of there anyways. So you were pretty much left with this group of people who were predisposed to believing what the government was saying and with the communist agenda. So you didn't have a ton of success seen from this kind of a thing for that reason. They basically say that it was only worth it because it caused some chaos. Because the military, the Vietnamese military, did start going after this fake group that we made up. Like, they did think there was this resistance, and they spent energy and money and time pursuing a falsity. So that's, I guess that's good. But yeah, so that is real. Of course, the comic book is real. Of course, the Catholic Church would do that. Yeah, 100%.
I didn't question that for a second.
And I think you can buy that comic book on Amazon.
Not only will I buy that comic book, guys, stay tuned for Is This Today?
Yeah, right. Is this today? Oh, man. Another. You foiled me again.
Go ahead and put a 2 underneath my name.
I know. I went to add the numbers earlier. I forgot it was too late. I don't know how text works in this image.
You don't have to do it right now. You do not have to do it while
anyways. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that is my stories. We are now 0-2. Dan keeps guessing my fake stories. We're going to take a quick 60-second break, and then we'll be back with Dan's stories about
surgery.
Wow. Be right back. We are back. Woohoo! Woohoo! Oh my gosh. Dan, I had a fun time researching these stories about propaganda. I did. I was talking earlier that it was... I told this last week, 2 weeks ago, when you gave me this topic, which is like, you gave me a topic that's really history. Now I have to go read history. I have to go learn things. And I did. And in the end, I wrote 3 stories, 2 of which are fascinating true stories that absolutely were interesting to me to write and then recant to you. So thank you for the opportunity to both learn and share.
And I have to imagine you learned a lot about other stories that did not make the cut. So that had to have been.
There's always that. For the most part, when you look up propaganda, though, you get it's a lot of imagery more than it is a lot of stories, right? Like you go look up like stories about propaganda, and it's like the dark stories behind the propaganda, and then it's just like not dark. It's just like this is where Uncle Sam came from, and it's like, I mean, but that's not that interesting. Like, so
yeah, you didn't compel me with that.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, Rosie the Riveter story, like that kind of stuff. It's just not. It's interesting. It's not like, did you know though? Like, aren't you shocked? So there are, I think, more than the stories behind the propaganda. It's just crazy what people have put to paper. Like actually pen to paper said, this is a poster, we're going to hang this everywhere, or we're going to send this out. I thought about more. Oh, really quick aside before you start your stories on surgery. I almost dove into one of my favorite pieces of propaganda, which is the legend of Kim Jong-un's grandfather, which we have discussed on an unreleased episode of BS in History, but there is a completely fabricated and absolutely insane story about the Kim dynasty and the way that Kim Jong-un's grandfather rose to power, and it's just permeated the North Korean culture to the degree that they think of the Kim dynasty as like, crazy gods, and it's the most propaganda-y thing in the world, but I couldn't tell it because I've told you that story in the past.
Okay, for some reason my brain is telling me that you made up that story before.
You know what? Did I tell a story about? Oh, we're gonna have to release these episodes and find out. There is weirdness about the way that Kim Jong-un's grandfather rose to power and the propaganda behind it. Something tells me I told a story about a horse, and I don't remember why.
He stole a horse and rode it into the sunset, if I'm not mistaken. I can't
Maybe we'll
remember,
have to tell that story anyways. So
I think it was false.
I think I made up details about it. Yeah, I think in our version of it, I maybe made up details, made up a version of it, and then told you what the real version of it is. But it is the case that the North Koreans, deify? I don't know what the word is. They really hail the Kim dynasty as like, absolutely worthy of being in power because of absolute falsehoods.
Oh, sure. That's the beauty of making your leader seem like a god. That's,
right.
It works.
Right. Exactly. Well, Dan, I am ready to hear some stories about surgery.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring it right in close here because my child has fallen asleep to my right, and now I have to protect that sleep. So hopefully this sounds just sultry enough for everybody because we're going to be talking about the sexy topic of surgery.
I regret it.
So you gave me the topic of surgery, and I debated for a while what I would do with that topic because there is a few roads I could have gone down. So, for example, I almost wrote a story about I'm gonna mispronounce his name, and I'm so sorry to everybody. Huatuo. Anyway. He was a Chinese doctor whose name literally meant medicine. And he is the first person to have done a successful heart transplant. And we're talking about in the 1200s.
Whoa! So,
there was some really cool historical stuff. And there was even stuff about, in ancient Greece. They had discovered stitching and the concept of stitching. There was really cool history pieces to the old stuff, but none of it was a narrative. None of it was a story. So when I say that he was the first to transplant a heart, that's all anyone ever said about it. They didn't say whose heart, why. Unless I wanted
There's just not a lot of records.
Yeah.
There was no HIPAA compliance at the time of this man and his heart transplant.
I can't share his medical details on air now because I know better.
You would be
I know
breaking
better.
HIPAA compliance. Continue.
So instead, I went with surgeries that happened in a circumstance that was so bizarre that none of them will sound. That was my goal.
Okay.
And of course, all of them happened right here in the US of A.
Of course.
So, story number 1. I titled this one, 2 Entrances, No Exits.
Okay.
In 1863, after the successful siege of Vicksburg, Union Lieutenant James Gibbon was shot off his horse. Actually, I just realized that I worded that wrong. During the siege of Vicksburg, Union Lieutenant James Gibbon was shot off of his horse. He was in critical condition and losing blood at a significant rate. After the battle, he was brought to a medical tent where it was discovered that the wound he had received went straight through his right shoulder. Okay. Surgeons worked to quickly seal the wounds, believing that the bullet had entered and exited his body. Lieutenant Gibbons was stabilized within days, but was forced to stay in the captured Confederate stronghold while he healed. It wasn't until almost a month later that Lieutenant Gibbons complained of an increasing difficulty using his right arm and a growing fever, that the doctors noticed that the infection that was present was growing under his skin. Acting fast, a surgeon named Amos Cochran reopened the wound, assuming that there was shrapnel that was sealed in, and inside he found not 1, but 2 bullets, because as it turns out, Lieutenant James Gibbons was shot by 2 separate men at almost the exact same time in almost the exact same part of his body from both front and back, creating the illusion of an entrance and exit wound, thus mystifying the doctors and having them believe that, well, the bullet left his body, we see the trail, we can see where it exited. But no, he had two balls left inside of his body. They did, of course, remove them, and he did recover. However, anyone who has followed medical history will know that in 1863, during the Civil War, there was only one real way you dealt with infection of the limb. Lieutenant James Gibbons did not get to keep his right arm. So that is story number 1.
Okay. Fascinating. Sounds like the kind of story you get from like in the old during war. Like this guy got shot in the war. This dude got shot at the same time from 2 different angles. Like it's less one of those stories you hear about in like a medical journal and more a story you hear about in Ripley's Believe It or Not. You know, like
I can actually clarify something of it though, and the reason why the story is known, just as an extra bit of context. It is because Doc Cochran, what was his first name? Amos. He was known as Doc Cochran. He became a very famous frontier doctor. So he was one of the first people to follow a lot of people during the gold rush. And so he actually, I can't remember where he ended up settling, but he was a famous enough doctor that his records are basically provided on this. This is the reason we know the story.
That bleeds into the question I was going to ask, which was that did this incident set precedent for any other like future medical procedures or additional like and this is the reason why we always check for shrapnel, you know, like was there some sort of practice that was put into place as a result of this? And hearing about this guy's history, like it sounds like this is just a growing resume for him of the crazy things that he experienced. But I don't know if there was any historical precedent that was set.
I think the better way to think of it is not, you know, was this an incident that caused them to rethink things, but rather it's a moment of, because at this time we're talking about surgery during a war.
Right.
If this had been in a hospital or medical unit, like an actual facility, I'm sure that they would have checked regardless. But when we're talking about battlefield surgeries, I mean, the reason why people got their limbs hacked off was because there was just no time.
Yeah.
You had to kind of move. So cool. I don't think that this was because of a practice that wasn't in place rather a practice that was ignored because they had to move quickly.
Just the necessity of battlefield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Understood.
Story number 2. The title, Surgeon, Operate on Thyself.
Okay.
In 1921, Evan O'Neill Kane of Kane, Pennsylvania, wanted to prove that ether, the primary general anesthetic that at that time was being used far too often when less dangerous local anesthetic could be substituted. As his test case, the doctor used himself, removing his own appendix using only local anesthetic by propping himself up on the operating table with a mirror over his abdomen. With 3 other doctors in the operating room as backup, Kane made the large incision needed to remove the appendix, and his assistants sutured him up. The doctor, which by the way, it was at the time when they did like the big, huge appendix scar. This is
Sure.
1920s. They did not have what we have now, where it's
They didn't suck it out with a vacuum. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, they had to really cut open. The doctor recovered nicely, and then in 1932, at the age of 70, Dr. Kane performed an even more complicated surgery on himself to repair an inguinal hernia. Inguinal? I never know how to pronounce that word. To repair an inguinal hernia because of the close proximity to the femoral artery. It was a particularly delicate operation. Kane performed it in just under 2 hours. Reportedly, he was relaxed and joking, even as he sutured within millimeters of the important blood vessels.
Okay.
The questions you have about Dr. Evan O'Neill Kane?
Why, if there were multiple other surgeons in the room, what was the goal? I mean, like, I get that, like, he's like, I can do it to myself. Was he trying to prove that the anesthetic was so good that you could just give surgery to yourself? Why did he not have the other people test the anesthetic on him?
I think the logic was, so again, the general anesthetic that was being used was ether.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I was going to use my question on what that is. I don't know, but no, don't go look it up. Don't go look it up. That's not my question. No.
That's fine. I want to make sure I know exactly what ether is composed of, because ether is known as organic compound. Oh no, ether is its own thing. I thought it was maybe a chemical,
Okay.
but it is known. Ether might as well have been a narcotic at the time.
Okay.
Like, truthfully, it's kind of the same as hearing stories of the West and them using cocaine to treat a toothache.
Right.
So he was trying to make the point that ether should not be used as frequently because it's very addictive and very dangerous. Now, why he had to do it to himself and not just prove by having a surgeon operate on him, I don't know, beyond the fact that it seems like it was a bit of an ego thing, seeing as he did it again 21 years later.
Yeah.
It seems
so
like
he's the
maybe he
David
just wanted
Blaine
to
of
prove
surgery.
Yeah, I feel like
He's Chris Angel.
He wanted to, it's the sign, you know what it is? It's Norman Osborn in the first Spider-Man film when he finds out that he has to go back to formula. He's not going back to formula. He was this close to human testing. He's putting himself in that chamber.
Yeah, but nobody else would do it for him.
Drug.
No one else in the world would do it for him. But
he could have hired someone.
All right,
he could have hired somebody.
Fair. All right, okay, all right. That's story number 2. I buy it.
All right. Story number 3, titled Twice. In 2008, 6 months into her pregnancy, Carrie McCartney and her husband Chad McCartney of Laredo, Texas, found out that their baby had an enormous and deadly tumor growing out of her tailbone. An ultrasound revealed that the non-cancerous grapefruit-sized growth, which was draining the baby's blood supply and would have killed her. I wrote that terribly. In a risky, rare procedure, surgeons at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston anesthetized, and I can't say anesthetized.
Yeah, fine. I get it. Used
Sure.
an anesthetic.
Used an anesthetic on McCartney to relax her womb. They moved her uterus entirely outside of her body, opened it, and then lifted about 80% of the baby's tiny body out, leaving just the head and upper torso inside. During the 4-hour procedure, surgeons had to remove the tumor as quickly as possible because too much exposure to air could have sent the baby into cardiac arrest. They then returned the fetus, which weighed about 1/4 pound, to the womb and closed the amniotic sac, hoping to retain as much of the precious amniotic fluid as possible. The baby was born again 10 weeks later on May 3rd of that year. Doctors say she's perfectly healthy, and her parents have named her Macy Hope McCartney.
Okay.
You wanted surgeries. This is what you wanted. I'm going to talk about
I know.
blood draining tumors.
Are there any other... What caused the tumor?
I mean, what causes any tumor?
I know, I thought that when I said it, but like, was any realization met after a fetus got a tumor? And that's not a thing you hear about very often. That's not a common like concern in pregnancies, that like, well, the baby might have a tumor, so we need to check that this and that. Like, was this a common thing already? Did doctors know that this could happen?
I mean, I think it can happen. I don't think it is frequently a grapefruit-sized tumor. I think that is relatively rare. Nothing about this story that I read ever mentioned anything about why the tumor. Admittedly, everything I read was more about why this surgery and how bizarre this surgery was to do in general. Like there's interviews with the doctors and them talking about how bizarre it was holding a child that small. It made their hands feel huge, and like it like almost tripped them out in the moment, which is the last feeling a surgeon wants to have while trying to operate. But yeah, there's nothing.
That's fine.
All I ever found was that it is a rare condition, striking 1 in 35,000 babies.
Okay.
So.
All right, Dan. So, actually, one bit of clarity from the story. If this was
Sure.
Answer this if it was written on your story in general. How far along was the baby when the surgery occurred?
6 months into her pregnancy.
And she gave birth 10 weeks after that.
Yes. Wait, let me make sure. Well, so to clarify, 6 months into her pregnancy, she found out about the tumor. The surgery then happened at some date after that, and then 10 weeks from there, the baby was reborn.
You got me. All right. I don't know. I truly don't know, because I was certain and now I am not certain.
Open the poll.
I don't think... let's open the poll. Hold on 1 second. Now, while I open the poll, I did not think that... Oops, close poll. What? Complete. Start poll. Starting over, sorry. I did not think that you would make up a story this kind of sensitive, if you will. Like, this is if you were going to make something up about surgery, I think you would have put an adult at risk in the surgery, not a child.
I would do anything to fool you.
Now, the reason I'm confused is because it's a grapefruit-sized tumor, but they learned about this tumor 6 months in. Like, I feel like a fetus 6 months is just over grapefruit size. Like, I could be completely wrong about that, but in every like diagram I've seen in a help, classroom, it's always like, here's your baby when it's a lima bean, here's your baby when it's a golf ball, here's your baby when it's a grapefruit. And I'm always surprised that like grapefruit is toward the end of the spectrum, or at least more than I would think. Maybe that's a scaling
Grapefruits are pretty big.
Well, that's the thing, is so was the tumor, though, you're saying.
Sure, yeah, it was a huge tumor. That was why they had to operate.
Twice this, the baby size, it was the baby and then a tumor, a second. I just don't, that fact, and then the fact.
hold on.
No, you don't have to go defending
the
anything.
weight of the baby. No, because I want to make sure you have the full context here. The baby was, because I mentioned the weight of the baby in my story. Weighed about 1/4 pound. This baby weighed 1/4 pound, and then there was a grapefruit on them.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to. Okay. All right. So here we go. So story number 1, again, Ripley's Believe It or Not story. A bullet enters a person from 2 angles. Super straightforward, really simple. Kind of about surgery. Kind of about this bizarre incident that happened. It sounds like a kind of thing you might find in your research. You know, a sort of innocuous, straightforward story. You know, wow, it's kind of interesting. A dude giving himself surgery. Now, that sounds really good. On paper, it's like this dude he cut himself open to try a new anesthetic. I feel like the facts of the matter don't add up to a reasonable justification of why he would have given himself surgery when there were you literally say there are other surgeons in the room for backup.
I said there are other doctors in the room. That is particular wording. I don't know if those doctors were surgeons.
Fair. But in order to test the efficacy of a new anesthetic, the only way of doing it was to give himself surgery and then do it again later when he's
not
70.
A new anesthetic. He was trying to prove that the local anesthetics that we have were sufficient for surgeries, and that not
ether,
every
right.
person needs ether for every surgery.
Now, maybe if I knew... Well, we don't know this answer because we asked it. And then there's the story about the baby. Man, I'm all over. I don't know. I wanted to know. All right. Listen, my gut says it's story number 2. My gut says that dude did not give himself surgery, that the baby was okay, which the baby was okay in your story, but like that you didn't put the baby in danger. After just having had a kid, that the Ripley's story about the battlefield inter-exit wound could have happened, and that guy didn't give himself surgery. That's my guess.
So I'm assuming that ramble is you saying that you believe story number 2 was false.
Correct. And by the way, we quickly got, since I've locked it in, we got another vote for story 1. So we got a yeah.
I'm trying to think Tabbykins just only hits the 1. Just to...
She types it out. I think she puts thought into it. She asked what were story 1 and story 2 again. I think she really thought through it, and she thinks that the 2 enters no exits story is false. So my guess is that story number 2 is false.
Okay. Well, between you and the audience, one of you got it right.
Thank God that the kid... Okay.
Yeah, so there's the good news. The kid is fine.
Okay.
Story 3 is true, and that child is fine.
Okay.
The false story of my surgery is story number 1.
No!
In fact, Doc Cochran is the doctor from the HBO series Deadwood.
Oh, man! I haven't seen it. Something that rings a bell. Tabby says, boom! Oh, my gosh!
Tabbykins, you win a prize. You should compete because Nathan cannot even hold a candle to the stories. Yeah, story number 2, absolutely true. That man absolutely performed surgery on himself, and I legitimately mean it when I say I don't know why. There was never a justification.
Well, that's why I wonder, like, was
there
some contention in the medical community that, like, no, local anesthetic, that'll never be good for surgery? Surgery?
Yes.
We can't do that. And he's like, I'll show you. You know, like, that's the
Not only will I not feel pain, but I can do the surgery.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, did he do it to himself because no one else would volunteer to do it? Like, no, everyone was like, he's like, I want to do this on a patient. They're like, are you kidding? No, you can't do that to an innocent person. And he's like, fine, I'll do it to myself.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if he wanted to do it on someone else, but was told no by the consensus of the medical community, that's what I thought. I'm like, if that were the case, if that were a detail I was given, I might have believed it, but and that you didn't give it to
But
me.
that still doesn't mean he needed to do it to himself unless he couldn't convince another doctor that it was going to be okay.
That's what I'm saying. Is like he couldn't convince anyone. He was like, "It'll be fine. I'll do it to a patient." And they're like, "You can't. That's against. First, do no harm." And he's like, fuck it, fine. I can do harm to myself." You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, but even further than that is he probably was like, all right, well, fine, do the surgery to me. And they're just like, no, do no harm. I can't kill you
Right.
for your crusade.
Oh, I see what you're saying. He couldn't find another doctor to do it to him. I think that would still be the case. I think every other doctor must have been philosophically against trying a new anesthetic with no proof that it worked. So he proved it worked.
And he proved it worked.
Tabby said, I believe it because of the other use case. Believe the anesthetic story.
The other use case? You mean his second attempt to surgery himself?
Can't believe he did it twice. That's crazy. Bork's in the house. Ether.
That's just bragging.
Ether.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about ether.
Ether was in abundance. It was, I mean, it felt great, right? We've opioids today kind of call their shots from our age of cocaine and ether usage to heal our woes. So, here we are. Here we are. Nathan, 0 on the board still for you.
That's
How does
0
that feel?
to 2. It doesn't feel good at all, Dan. I keep getting a hydrate redeemed on Twitch, telling me I have to drink, but I have nothing to drink. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, Dan, to not be able to pick out these stories. Now, I felt good about my stories this week. It didn't mean that I won. You still guessed it, but I felt good. So
they were great. They were great stories. I said this to you on the break, and I think it's important I tell your audience as well. The only reason I got it right this week on his stories is because the second story didn't feel ridiculous enough for Nathan to have pulled it for this segment. It was well written. It was believable. It's just the propaganda itself of a children's book. To me, I was just like, I feel like that's pretty basic. They've been doing that for a long time. Kids are the target of all propaganda.
Got to get more complex. Got to make sure all 3 stories are equally as complex. All right, listen, I'm learning.
How'd you like my double entrance wound story? I felt really good making that up. I just want to say, I felt that was a compelling...
What I was going to say is it also felt too simple, but it felt so simple that I was like, compared to the other 2 sort of extreme, I thought you made up the crazy but not dark story. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the idea that a dude got shot from 2 angles, like, that is a crazy cosmic coincidence, but it's the kind of thing that, like, maybe it happened, but it's just sort of like, if it did, it was just a coincidence. So, like, it felt so simple. A dude got hit twice. I guess the fact that they would have missed the shrapnel is interesting. So, I mean, I see where you came up with it. I thought you were like, I want to go bizarre, but not endanger a child, So I was like, you're right in the middle there with your self-surgery story. But I do like your story.
I need to note, I would have endangered a child.
I know you wanted to fool me.
Do not think. Do not think I wouldn't have. And also, I tried a new thing, and I think it worked well, which was during my first story, during my lie, I did a lot of, like, accidental asides, as in I was just like, oh, and actually, at this time, right, I threw a lot of those in to make you feel like there's no way this is a lie. He's got research in the background.
Oh my gosh, and we have more people back in chat. Nick Snugs had to put the toddler back down to bed. Here's how it wound up, guys. Today, I got nothing right, and Dan got his thing right, which means we are officially 0 to 2 on this game. 0 to 2. Now, while you're here, audience, we're going to give each other our topics for 2 weeks from now, and in 2 weeks, we're doing this again. We're telling each other 3 stories about history, and we have to make up one of them and fool everyone with the one we made up. So, Dan, in 2 weeks, I want to hear stories about naval exploration.
Naval exploration?
Yeah, like I was thinking about it, and it's weird that we keep sailing places and finding new places.
I don't think we keep doing it. I think satellites kind of...
For the most part, it's already happened, but, like, when it happened. Yeah, I was just thinking about, it's interesting to me that, like, constantly throughout colonial history, that civilizations would say, get on this boat and go that way until you hit something, and then claim that world. make that ours. And so I want to know about times. I mean, there's the obvious famous examples, but I want to know about times that new lands were found because we sent a boat out in a direction and said, go find us something. Exploring stuff by sea.
Now, this is very important. There is a lost episode of BS in History where I covered conquistador. I will not make this about conquistadors.
Fair.
I will make this about the missions themselves and not the people involved.
Yes, because I did at one point want to know about the horrific and horrible misadventures of the conquistadors. Yes, yeah. I like that too. I want to know about exploration. I want the positive vibe of like we were going out to find a new land. Now, granted, there's probably some colonialism, and negative racial stereotypes.
No, I will call out the colonialism as I see it. If anyone has listened to my podcast, go folk yourself. Anytime we come across a conqueror that is celebrated as a hero, we always take at least a minute or two to call them an a-hole. So don't worry.
But I care less about the conquering and more about the desire to go find things. And Nate Snugs has said in chat that both the Navy and space travel is propaganda, which it can very much absolutely can absolutely
100%.
So
Navy at least does have a little bit of a military advantage, mainly because it became important during the 1600s, 1700s to have a Navy. England made it impossible to survive if you didn't.
Yeah.
But in the modern era, both are absolutely propaganda.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, like, hey, get on this boat and go find us new land is that whole idea isn't just because we're people and we want to be the best people. It's because we have a dominion and we want the people in that dominion to know that we're expanding it, we're growing, and we're becoming a bigger and bigger empire. So like,
or it was the quest for new trade routes. Don't forget how important trade routes were.
That is why
Portugal got as rich as they were. They were trade route extortionists.
Or it was purely economic. Absolutely. So there's all sorts of incentivization to why you would get on a ship and go find new places. But I just am curious, like, why did we send people out and what did they find beyond the new world, if you will?
Love it. I like it.
Okay. Cool. All right. What's my stories? What am I doing?
Nathan, I thought about this one a little bit ago because when I gave you the elf topic, you got very excited because it was a subject that you cared about, right? And
true. So and it was a realm in which fiction fits. Does that make sense? Like like writing a fake story about propaganda, I've got to understand the landscape of how propaganda looked in order to come up with a convincing story. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't the last. I had a great time and I loved it. I got coming up with the stories. Elves was a landscape I already knew. So I could fictionalize within it very simply.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to give you something in that realm, but not something I already know a lot about. That's the challenge, right? Because so my original thought was I would love to give Nathan give me some classic Hollywood story. But I know a lot of those, so that would be tough. However, I don't know a lot about the other Hollywoods of the world. There are a lot of burgeoning film industries across the planet, and I would love to learn about some of the other Hollywood.
Got it. Done.
You think you can handle that?
Done. Now let me just say this. There are Hollywoods, and then there are film industries. Are you asking for Hollywoods or film industries?
I am asking for Hollywood.
Done.
Specifically Hollywoods, but excluding Dollywood.
Damn it, that's what I was going to do. I was going to give you a Dollywood story. Oh, wait.
Unless Dollywood has made a film, and then you can absolutely talk about Dollywood.
All right. Good news is almost all international film industries end in Hollywood.
I had a feeling they all kind of mimic that, except for like England, who was just like, no, we shall call it the Queen's film industry.
Right. Now, literally just looking at a Wikipedia list, which don't go to, but just telling you right now, I could put any consonant in front of Hollywood and it would be a legitimate I could make one up now and then scroll down this list and find you the corresponding film industry. They're all
There's
over.
a Zollywood?
Zollywood refers to the cinema of Zimbabwe. I'm looking at it right now. You said it as I was looking at it, which is weird, but yes. I can't click on Zollywood though, so there's no stories to tell there. But yes.
I'm very, very excited.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was BS in History. Thank you guys for joining.
I've already got a name for this episode too, but I'm not going to say it now.
Ooh, we'll reveal it later. Thank you guys very much for joining BS in History. Remember to check out Go Folk Yourself. Airing when? Do we know yet?
July 4th, America's birthday, the day after Hamilton shows up on Disney.
Airing July 4th, the day after Hamilton shows up on Disney+. Don't forget to watch Hamilton on Disney+. You can check out all the links to the things we've referenced in the description. I'm also going to, I forgot to do this last week, but I'm also going to link to some of the articles that I referenced in my stories because I don't want to plagiarize, and I did say some verbatim-y things. So
I stole a lot of my stories, so I will do the same because I would like to give credit to Newsweek.
Yes. Oh, there you go. That's nice. Yeah, I read what was effectively probably a college kid's essay. So on the comic book thing. So we will link to the sources of our stories in the description below, as well as our corresponding channels. Feel free to check that out. And if you know somebody who likes history and might want to play along, feel free to link them to this video. We would love to tell more stories about history, and we can do that if you guys are enjoying listening. So thank you guys very much. That's everything from me.
That's I didn't have anything to begin with.
That's all, folks. I don't know. All right, have a good week, guys. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.